Happy Industrial Water Week, Scaling Up Nation. Trace Blackmore, your host for the Scaling Up H2O podcast, your one-stop place for celebrating Industrial Water Week. Of course, we have been your official party central since Industrial Water Week began. We make sure that we treat this week like our Super Bowl. We try to bring out all the stops, and we make this week fun for you to celebrate the best industry out there, the industrial water industry. Folks, you are part of the Scaling Up Nation, and that is a community of industrial water treaters. I want to thank you for being part of it, and I want to thank you for celebrating all the way through to Wastewater Thursday as we celebrate Industrial Water Week this year. Now, if you haven't, you still have plenty of time to catch up on Pre-Treatment Monday and Boiler Tuesday, and then yesterday was Cooling Wednesday. Now, tomorrow is Careers Friday, and this is when a lot of people will have a cake. They will share a cake with their favorite customers, maybe their team, maybe you just want your own darn cake, but you need to make sure you put that order in today if you're going to get it from a bakery. And if you're going to make your own, by all means, do that. If you want to make the water cake that we talk about here on the show, you can find that recipe on the show notes. I personally do not recommend it, but I do know people out there in the Scaling Up Nation that do enjoy it. And, you know, there are all sorts of people out there. So I am not going to judge you. My grandmother used to say, if we all like the same thing, we would run out. So there you go. I am glad you enjoy a delicious, in your mind, water cake. And I will make sure that I leave all of that to you so I do not take out any of the enjoyment that you can have with that. Nation, I've mentioned this each and every day this week. One of my favorite things about this week is I get to see you, and so many of you during our themed days are sending pictures of you with that particular piece of equipment, and you're hashtagging that to Industrial Water Week or IWW24. So thank you for doing that. As I mentioned on yesterday's show, people are asking, can I catch up? Because I'm not going to be at my favorite boiler until tomorrow, and that's Careers Friday. Folks, that is perfectly acceptable. If you want to catch up, take those pictures. Just make sure you add the hashtag Industrial Water Week or IWW24. Nation, today we are celebrating wastewater. And wastewater is one of those things where I really think that we are not only helping our customers, we are helping the planet, because this is water that we need to take something out of it so it can be reused for something else. And because we understand how to do certain things, we are able to bring the value back in that water so it can be reused. And of course, all water can be reused, but we're making sure that it's easier to be reused when it gets to wherever it's going. So I want to applaud everybody who treats wastewater, because let's face it, you probably don't get a lot of applause for treating wastewater, and you probably come out of a lot of plants having to change your clothes. Well, folks, it is worth it. And I'm sure I told this story before on a previous episode, but when I first started working with my father, we went to a turkey rendering plant. And my dad could not wait to train me on that plant so he didn't have to go anymore. But I remember I complained about how nasty the smell was. I mean, it just coated everything as you breathed in and everything you were wearing. And I said, Dad, that stinks. And he said, son, that's what money smells like. And they were great customers of ours. Some of the most nasty things I've ever seen in my career were within that plant. And I remember I was always one that wanted to take advantage of where I was, when I was, and there was a property management group not too far from that plant. I had to travel to go to that plant, and I went to their office to meet with them because, hey, why not? I was there, they were there. Well, I forgot how badly I smelled. I was able to recover from that, but every time I met with those individuals, they reminded me of how bad I smelled, but they were in the area. They knew exactly where it was that I came from. And they said, hey, you were at XYZ plant, weren't you? And I said, yes, I was. Well, that was enough for me to have some clout. If I was working with them, I should be working with these new customers, or at least they knew somebody they could call to verify how good my work was. So I don't recommend walking in stinky to a new prospective customer, but for my case on that instant, it actually worked. Now, what I did after that, I was extremely embarrassed. I didn't know how to take things like that. I was in my either late teens or early 20s. It was one of those. And I remember from that point on, I would have my travel bag sealed up in a trash bag in the trunk of my car. And there was a truck stop not too terribly far from that. And I just made it a habit that after I serviced that plant, if I was going to do any prospecting in the area, actually, if I was going to do anything else, I would stop at that truck stop. I would take a shower. I would change my clothes. And then my clothes went in that trash bag. And that trash bag did not get opened up until they were inside the washing machine. And I didn't have a lot of money back then. So you better believe I reused those clothes. But I try not to stink up my house too much. And I always remember I put a little bit of bleach so it didn't totally damage the clothes, but it did get the odor out. All right, so there's my helpful housekeeping tips for today. I'm sure you have a similar story with that. Wastewater is one of those things that everybody appreciates when it's not working. When everything's working, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And there's almost always a better mousetrap that I found. A lot of people will keep doing the same thing because it has always worked. But maybe you can go in there and see if something else will work better. Now, that being said, I'm going to talk about the jar study because this was one of the first things that my father taught me. And my dad had a gangster. And if that sounds funny, it's probably because you've listened to this podcast for a very long time. And our friend Kevin Cope of episodes 78 and 79 came on, and I told this story to him that I thought my dad said a gangster. And so I called it a gangster. Anyway, so Kevin, being the fun guy that he is, whenever he teaches jar testing, he always pays homage to a gangster. And I think he has Al Capone and a couple of other people that are superimposed on the gangster. There, I said it properly. So I love that we can have fun with each other. So I'm going to go through really quickly kind of what you need to do with a jar test. So the first thing you need is a gangster. Now, I have done this with the little, now I can't think of what they're called, the little pills that you put on the bottom of a magnetic spinner. It'll work with that, but I'll tell you the fins that are on a gangster seem to work the best for this type of testing. And there are so many new styles out there. I think I still have my dad's. It looks like it's out of the 1960s. It lights up on the bottom, and it has 4 different areas where I can put 1,000 milliliter Griffin beakers, on each one of those. And that allows me to run 4 separate tests at the same time. So here's just a couple of things that you might want to consider when it comes to doing wastewater jar testing. So however you're going to agitate that, and you've got to make sure you agitate it. So you've got your gang stirrer. So I'm saying it phonetically properly, enunciating properly. You've got that. You've got your 4 Griffin beakers. Label them. I normally label them 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, whatever it is, label them. I know that doesn't sound like a big deal, but trust me, as you start doing things, you do multiple ones of these, you want to make sure that each time you test, you have a new label. So if the 4 that I'm getting ready to test totally failed, then that's going to be not 1, 2, 3, 4 again. It's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8. Or if I'm doing it with the alphabet, I'm going to go up through there because I'm going to take notes. And folks, there are so many people that I have seen start testing without doing proper notes. I know you either love doing lab reports or you hated doing lab reports, but there's a reason that when you were in school, you did lab reports, and that's so you could document your findings. If you don't document, you're going to have a happy mistake. For those Bob Ross fans, those are trees normally, but you can't make trees out of wastewater. So you're going to figure out what those happy mistakes are. And you can go back in your notes and say, I didn't even think about trying this with that, but let me try it. Look at that. That works so much better. So make sure that you take notes. So that's Trace's helpful tip number 1. Make sure you label, make sure you take notes, and write down everything that you're doing. I take notes in bullet points, so you don't have to be too wordy with your notes. And then if you're not going to be on site, or if the sample water is going to change because it changes during shifts or whatever, get more water than you're going to need. My minimum when I do jar studies is 5 gallons. I might get a couple of 5 gallons because who cares if I throw it away? But I really care if I don't have enough. All right, so you now have your flasks, you have the proper amount of water. Maybe it's halfway in that 1 liter or 1,000 milliliter beakers. So 500 milliliters, we'll say. Then you're going to get your stir started. And typically, you are going to start with a coagulant first. And talk to your suppliers because they've got these really cool test kits where they're all laid out. These are all my coagulants. These are all my flocculants. This is how I'm going to adjust pH. It's just really nice how they do that. So you can make your own, as I have done, but you might be able to work with a supplier and they've done all of that work for you. Now, what you're going to do is you're probably going to get 10 ml syringes. Now, these used to be cheap at one time. I couldn't tell you what they actually cost now. You do not need a needle on them, but that's going to allow you to easily grab your sample out of where your vessel is, and you do not want to cross-contaminate your main coagulants or flocculants or whatever you have. And then you are simply going to add an amount there. Now, I like to measure the amount, and I'll put it in A, and I'll see what happens. Now, depending on what's going to happen, I may put a little bit more in B, and so on. I'm getting data. Maybe I'm going to add some aluminum and see what that does, and then observe that. Now, what we're looking for is called flock, and it might be called microflock. These are small particles, so it goes from being totally dispersed, and now it looks like it's starting to break up. That is exactly what we want to see. By the way, your mixer at this point is never on a high speed, probably in a medium to a medium low speed. And if you're starting to see some flock, you're then going to move on to your next step, which is flocculation. Now, I like to turn the gang stirrer, said it properly, down a little bit, and then I will add my flocculant. So this is after I got good flock particles in the first stage, and now I'm going to the next stage, and now I'm going to treat all of these. And normally one will work better than another. And if you get a test kit, you'll see you'll have a ton of different things. Normally they're in ionic strengths or the molecule size. So you can see what you're putting in there and you're making notes about all of that. Then next, you might want to have to adjust for pH. So you'll need to add to bring that. So whatever that effluent discharge needs to be is at that particular pH. And now you've got a recipe through all the trial and error of what works. Now you're going to go back and do it again. See why you need so much sample, and you're going to see if you can do it better. Maybe if you add a little more. In a lot of cases, maybe if you add a little bit less, you're going to get better results. Now, with those better results, you're going to create a procedure. And because you measured everything out, because you wrote everything down, you can do this on a larger scale for your customer to do an actual field trial. Now, there's some great wastewater jar testing procedures out there. I just kind of went off memory, some of the things that I do. You're going to come up with your own way of doing things, but just let me warn you, what I see is people don't properly measure things out. And the reason you want to properly measure things out is so you can make a larger batch test out in the field. And then people don't take proper notes so they can actually repeat what they're doing. And I can't tell you how many times it was a happy mistake that actually came to the rescue. And that's how we turn happy mistakes into trees. We take notes and we duplicate it. So I hope that helped you. Kevin, if you are listening, thank you for always talking about the podcast when you teach wastewater and the gangster. I made sure to enunciate very well on that. Nation, if you go to scalinguph2o.com and put in wastewater, we have done a lot of episodes on wastewater. And there's just so much content on the Scaling Up H2O webpage. So if you are looking for something to learn the next step in, I have made it very easy with all this content, and then my staff has made it easy for you to find by putting it on our webpage. We're all working together to make this industry better, to make you an industrial water treater that's raising the bar each and every time you go out into the field. And Nation, I hope that this episode inspired you to do a jar test. Here's another friend to help celebrate Wastewater Thursday.
My name is Chris Drover with ZwitterCo. My work with wastewater includes making membrane technology. So I'm the co-founder of a membrane technology company, and we make advanced membranes for all manner of industrial wastewater use and reuse. My most interesting wastewater story is actually doing a live on-camera taste test of reclaimed industrial wastewater from a couple different sources, including a hospital, which was a little bit of a scary idea, but the membranes worked great and the water was fantastic. Something I think everybody should know about wastewater and think about is that, water's water, and it's wastewater because we've contaminated it. And we're all dealing with the same water on this planet over and over again. So if we want to be here for the long term, the designation wastewater always has to be a temporary one. And that kind of leads me to, where I see the future of wastewater going is really understanding that water is water and wastewater needs to be reused and recycled for our activities to be sustainable in the long run.
Chris, thanks for coming on Wastewater Thursday and helping us celebrate with the Scaling Up Nation. If you want to listen to Chris's episode, that was episode 349. We were talking about membranes in the beginning of 2024. So go ahead and re-listen to that, or maybe listen to that for the first time if you haven't heard that already. And Nation, if you have not caught up with all the episodes that we've been dropping to you this Wastewater Thursday, well, it just wasn't today. It was also Cooling Wednesday, and it was also Boiler Tuesday, and it was also Pre-Treatment Monday. Folks, this is the 4th episode that we have aired this week to help you celebrate. So that's fine. You can go back and catch up. Make sure that you are tuning in for tomorrow for Careers Friday. Careers Friday is always my favorite day because let's face it, we would not be here if we didn't have a career in industrial water treatment. And normally these are the highest days that people share their social media. And take a picture, whatever piece of equipment it is, you're going to hashtag that with Industrial Water Week or IWW24. And tomorrow, so many people take pictures with customers, with their mentors, with their mentees, with their team, and with a cake. So whatever it is, make sure you get out there, you hashtag those pictures. I love seeing it. And another thing I love is bringing you encore episodes of Detective H2O. So here is the case of Seeing the Dead.
The Case of Seeing the Dead. As he stood looking out the rain-spattered window of his office in downtown Waterville, Herbert Henry Oxidane, P.I., CWT, cracked a sideways smile when his black rotary phone sprang to life. On the third ring, he answered. Detective H2O here, the best water treater this side of the Ohio. Solving water problems drop by drop. What you got?
Mr. Oxidane, Detective Oxidane, or H2O, whatever your moniker is, this is Charlie Baxter, originally from Savannah, Georgia, but I now live in Waterville and I work at Carlisle Industrial Incorporated. I got your name from a friend and I thought I'd drop a dime on you.
I see. Well, since you got me on the blower, why don't you spit it out? I charge by the minute.
Paying cabbage is no problem if you can come on out here and solve our problem. We have this process loop, you see, and it keeps getting loaded up with those microbial critters. I tell you what, despite all our best efforts, why don't y'all come on down here and I'll give you the full scoop.
All right, you've hooked me. I'll get my rust bucket started and be out your way within the hour. I might have to fill up the old mare first since you're uphill most of the way and she gets mighty thirsty in her old age.
Fantastic, Detective H2O. We'll be ready for you. Y'all come on down, you hear?
As if on demand, the deluge of rain slowed to a light drizzle as Detective H2O pulled to a stop in his rusty blue Ford. Water was in his blood, and weather like this always soothed his soul. Charlie Baxter met him at the front gate and escorted him to his office in the middle of the plant. The detective had never been here before. A multinational water treatment company had this account buttoned up for years. It was telling that he was being invited here now. Something had them perplexed, and solutions weren't forthcoming. This is quite the complex operation you have here, Mr. Baxter. Pipes running everywhere, from every direction, it seems. Some water and some not.
Oh, please. Call me Charlie. And what should I call you?
Detective H2O, was the bland reply.
Oh, of course.
Charlie quickly recovered.
You are quite right, Detective H2O. This facility looks like a bowl of spaghetti. In fact, people accuse us of getting Willy Wonka to design it. Every nook and cranny has a purpose to get the final product out the door. But it ain't an easy task keeping it all going. And you can take that to the bank.
Tell me about this process loop that's giving you the headache that you mentioned on the phone. Charlie looked out at the facility and said,
You see, the main process loop provides cooling water to several critical processes in the plant. It's a completely closed loop, all clammed up with no open water to the atmosphere. We had some failures in some piping and even a heat exchanger. Upon inspection, all the reports said MIC, or microbiologically induced corrosion, that is. This comes as no surprise since the metal samples we took even felt slimy.
I see. What did you do next? You mentioned taking action on the phone earlier.
First, we tested the system for microbial activity, and boy, did we find them. Then we added a non-oxidizing biocide. That seemed to ward them little suckers off for a while, but they soon came back. We tried a few more times, but it was the same old story. It was like a broken record. Then we moved to an oxidizing biocide, and we flushed the system before and after we added that biocide. That's not an easy task with a loop this large. Plus, we had to add fresh water treatment chemicals. Those critters came back again. Sometimes you can even smell those suckers in the water. Just over a month and a half ago, we repeated the oxidizer, drain, and flush again. And of course, we had to put new water treatment chemicals in too. You can probably guess what happened after that. They seemingly returned from beyond the grave to resurrect themselves once again. That's where you come in. Our experts are out of ideas,
Charlie said, dropping his head. The detective eyed the poor sap and replied, "Well, you've got quite the story to tell there. That's a lot to take in, but I'll do my best to get this canary to sing. First, what is the chemical treatment program you use in the main process loop?"
Nitrite. Now, I know where you're going with this because we continually see our nitrite levels drop as them bug counts keep going up. That's why we also did a pre-flush prior to adding the oxidizer, since we didn't want the reaction between the two becoming part of the oxidizer demand.
Yes, very good. Nitrate can be a bug food, and we'll take that into consideration. Nitrite is an excellent corrosion inhibitor and is used successfully in all kinds of applications without the issues you are experiencing. We won't discount its impact, but let's get the lay of the land first. I need to see your testing logs, disinfection reports, and whatever other details you can show me regarding the actions you've taken.
We're an open book around here, Detective. It's already laid out on that table over yonder. Y'all going over there and help yourself.
As Detective H2O perused through the files, he took notes, pulled out his near abacus calculator to confirm a few things, and peppered Charlie with questions. Anything Charlie didn't know, he pulled his guys in to answer. "Charlie, procedurally, I can't poke holes in your story. It does appear the disinfections were by the book with enough oxidizer for enough time throughout a multitude of checkpoints in the system to be effective. In most applications, it would have worked. There's more to find out, though. Can you walk me through the system next? I want to see everything from where the makeup water comes in to the pumps, heat exchangers, side stream filters, chemical addition points, vents, and drains."
Not a problem. And I know where to just start this little trip. Y'all come on now, you hear?
Charlie took Detective H2O through a maze of piping, stairs, and aisleways. All the time, the detective kept his eye on the main process loop piping and sketched a process flow diagram as they went along. They tracked down every T, opened the pot feeder, inspected the bag filters, etc. As they stood at what Charlie said was the end of the road, Detective H2O glared at his hand-sketched process flow diagram and said, "Okay, this is the last jump-off point from the main line just above our heads. It's the same diameter as the primary flow of the main process loop, quite large. Where does it go?"
Well, that's there for future expansion plans so we can connect those operations to the main process loop. It ends just beyond that wall over there.
"It ends, you say? Can you show me?" Charlie led the way through a door into the next room where the piping simply ended with a blind flange. Peering up at the stunted piping, Detective H2O knew he'd found what he'd been looking for all along. "So tell me, Charlie, when you did your disinfection, draining, and flushing of the system, did you do anything special with this part of the piping?
Well, no we didn't. As a matter of fact, I really hadn't given it no mind until you just brought it up right now. I'm sure it drained with the rest of the system.
Detective H2O gave his trademark sideways, slightly unsettling smile and proclaimed, "That's a dead leg, my good fellow."
A what? A dead what?
A dead leg. Not a zombie apocalypse, but an area within a system with low to no flow. It can be a leg of piping dead-ended like this one, or even an offline system, such as a chiller. Not only can sediment slowly collect in these areas, but so can microbiological activity such as biofilms. Because of the lack of sufficient flow, water treatment chemicals cannot reach far enough into them to be effective. The bugs set up home in these dead legs, safe from your biocides and disinfection activities. Each time you tried to clean the system, they simply waited and re-inoculated the bulk water all over again. I believe this is our smoking gun.
Ooh-wee! A dead leg. Who'd have thunk? But what you say makes sense. I tell you what, I'm tired of taking the fall for these little guys. What can you do about it, Detective?
In your case, I think you need to disinfect the system one more time, unfortunately. But this time, the entire system. If you can't remove the whole dead leg, you'll at the very least need to install a drain line at the end that you'll have to open on a regular basis to establish flow, remove any sediment, and expose the piping to the water treatment. Plus, I'm curious to see what's inside the pipe. It will need to be cleaned out. Let's walk the system again to make sure we're not missing any other such dead legs. And then I'll work with you to develop a plan for a thorough disinfection this time.
All righty then. Let's get started. We'll have them critters sleeping with the fishes before we know it.
1 month, 2 months, 6 months, and a year later, Charlie Baxter called Detective H2O to give him an update on the main process loop. There was no noted microbiological activity. Detective H2O had saved the day once again and was paid all the cabbage he was due. In the underbellies and penthouses of the metropolis of Waterville, where the boilers percolate and cooling towers fog, there is one man who works tirelessly to end corrosion, stop scale, fight low-life microbes, and conserve water. That man is Detective H2O, best water treater this side of the Ohio, solving water problems drop by drop.
Scout Up Nation, I love being part of these Detective H2Os. There are just such neat ways, such creative ways to teach us things in industrial water treatment. And let me say, it's not just James McDonald out there that's doing content differently. There's several people that are putting videos together and they're sending them to me just to say, hey, look what I'm doing. There are people that are doing blogs out there and video logs and all these different things. I think that that is amazing. I think it's great that you love your industry so much that you are sharing things that you know with other people, trying to get them excited about industrial water treatment. And at the same time, too, you are making sure that your knowledge is going out there and helping other people. So all those people that have let me know that you're doing that, my hat, I don't wear a hat very often, but if I did, it would be off to you. And maybe you're saying, Trace, I am never going to record a video and upload it to YouTube to teach somebody how to do something. Well, that's cool. Take what you know and teach somebody else that didn't know that. And that creates that ripple effect. Folks, that is the whole point of this podcast. How do we elevate this industry? How do we motivate you to elevate this industry, one industrial water treater at a time? And Nation, I want to thank you for joining me on Wastewater Thursday. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for Careers Friday.